recording. Okay, so welcome to our Easthampton Economic Development and Industrial Commission meeting for today, Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. I would like to remind folks that pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the EDIC is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public is possible or will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access these proceedings as provided for in the order. We will post a record of this meeting on the city's website and via Easthampton Media as soon as we are able. So, two things. One, continue to wear a mask. COVID is still real. You can get a vaccine. And what else do I have to say about that? Oh, protocol. If you're not talking, useful to mute yourself. You never know what's going to happen in the background. I had my dog lose her mind while I wasn't talking in a meeting earlier. It didn't go great. Okay, so first on the agenda today is to approve the February 16th, 2021 meeting minutes. That's a lie. Hold on. I didn't read our mission, and I want to remind people what our mission is. EDIC's mission is to support and enhance the economic environment for current and future businesses, residents, and the community at large. That said, February 16th, 2021 meeting minutes. Thank you, Josh Rosenblatt, for providing those. Has everyone had occasion to review them?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve last month's minutes.
Okay.
I second.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, holler aye. I'm gonna go in name order. Chris Korchik.
Aye.
Cassie Eckhoff. I see you say aye. Josh Rosenblatt.
Aye.
Tom Brown.
Aye.
Casey Douglas.
Aye.
Wynn Morrissey says aye as well. Thank you, Josh. We haven't got a member of the public here to speak, and so we are going to swiftly move to updates from Jeff Bagg, City Planner.
Thank you. I think the update I wanted to share was about the project I think we talked about last time, the local rapid recovery plan. So, you know, the city partnered with the chamber to apply for, and we got basically, we're getting consulting services to help Easthampton, you know, reach out to businesses, find out what are issues and, you know, caused by COVID-19, and to formulate a plan, kind of a response plan, a triage kind of approach to things that the city can do to be ready. Next steps, one of which is to prepare for additional funding. So the way the state works these days is if you have a plan and you've identified goals and actions, then when funding comes out, you can kind of assess the funding source and look at your goals and find the match. We have a great consultant who is out of Rochester, New York, who has spent some time in Easthampton through the mayor's office and kind of attached to Blueprint Easthampton. And I think the same consultant's also going to be doing the same project in Holyoke. But it's a pretty proscriptive process that the state has laid out. One of the things that the state is looking to do is kind of establish baseline data and collect the same data across a bunch of municipalities to kind of get, you know, we've never encountered a pandemic before. So the state is looking for this kind of unified approach to gather some data and then come up with these strategies that are specific to Easthampton. One of the things that's going to pop like right away is a survey for businesses that are located in a study area. So when we submitted the grant, the study area had to be kind of a focused area. It couldn't be just citywide. So our focus area was, we tried to put it in line with other recent planning studies. So it includes Main Street, Union Street, and Cottage Street. And then what we also add on is Pleasant Street and the Mills, because that's kind of our arcing loop. So it's kind of like downtown in the Mills is our study area. And so Gwen was on a call with us to kind of get oriented. I think we're gonna have a discussion about broad EDIC involvement, but then maybe someone else to help participate. So Mo is a crossover member. She's a chamber rep, but also this group. But this is going to be kind of like a hands-on deck kind of thing where we're going to need someone hopefully to help kind of. There's a lot of legwork to do to get everything ready. But the first thing is a survey. And the interesting thing about the survey came out, that the template came out, and it's set. So from the way I understood it is we don't get input on the questions to be asked. But the request from the consultant is we need to help get people, as many businesses as possible, to take the survey, take the time and take the survey. And so we're meeting again on Thursday. I would expect us to try to kind of launch this survey next week. And just roughly, it's going to be available for probably like 4 weeks. And then that data will inform a couple next steps. And then we'll have some kind of public outreach. And then we'll really start to grind through some of these kind of like short-term, like a lot of short-term goals and strategies that we can be setting up to kind of be responsive to COVID-19. That's kind of the whole idea. So I'm breezing through this real quick, but Gwen, do you want to talk about you want to fill any gaps that you feel like I may have missed, or talk about how EDIC could be involved?
Can I point out one quick thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
For people who get the Hampshire Gazette, there was a great article on it in this morning's paper.
Thank you. That's true.
I don't think that there are any gaps. I am not up to speed on absolutely everything that has happened to date, and I will not be able to attend Thursday's meeting. So I think it is worthwhile to have a quick conversation here about whether in the near term, like in the next 10 days, I can't make myself available to that project. So if there is someone who would like to do that and would like to pinch it and help represent EDIC along with Mo, that's something we can talk about here, I think.
Sorry, Jeffrey, when is this meeting happening? Is it open to the public, I'm assuming?
This is not a public meeting. No, it's like a preparation meeting. It's at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning, 9 a.m.
I could be representative if I get a link.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think it would be good, Casey, because one of the first steps is going to be really, we all, like everybody on EDIC can help, but I think like understanding the survey and the launch of it, and trying to use, I'm sure you are exposed to a lot of people, and anyone that we can get to take the survey. I think the hard part is there's probably a little bit of survey fatigue, and there's all this stuff out there for everybody, and but this is the one that we got to try to channel people to this, because this is going to result in an Easthampton specific plan for steps that we should be taking kind of coming out of this. So I think that'd be great. And I don't think this is the only opportunity. It's certainly not the only opportunity to be involved, but this is kind of going to be a big push for the next couple of days to kind of figure out a social media strategy and get flyers out and do kind of the things that we would do to kind of to promote a survey. So that's great. So Casey, I'll get you the link. If something changes, that's fine. But we wanted to kind of at least, I think having EDIC involved in this is going to be meaningful over the next couple of months. I think the project overall ends in August, and it's anecdotal, but maybe I've said this before, but I'm sorry to say this, is that there is anticipation of a lot of money becoming available to start to respond and support businesses. And this plan is supposed to give us kind of the blueprint to get there, the guide, set us up that we've done this program, and then seek the state funding that we hope will come. So pretty short, compact, and kind of very strategic.
Anybody? Tom.
Jeff, a couple of quick questions, I hope.
Yeah.
So you mentioned launching the survey. Do you know how it's going to get launched?
Not exactly. It is like, it's going to be a link. And so, we briefly talked about like, it's going to go on the Chamber of Commerce webpage. The city will have it somewhere on our webpage. It'll be available through, basic social media things. And then I think we need a flyer. Like we need to flyer. The consultants talked about coming to Easthampton and helping us like get the boots on the ground and just really walk around and really just try to tell people like, this is really important. Like this is worth your time to kind of take this and help us. So I don't know if that answers your question about launching it, but that's the idea.
And then do you know how many questions there are in the survey?
I do not.
Because that's sometimes, if they open a survey and it's 50 questions, that sometimes turns people off as opposed to 10 or 15 questions.
Yeah.
And I think you answered my last question about the overall goal. It sounds like with this plan in place that it would line the city up for, or guide us, if you will, to this pool of money in the state.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we all know like there's 351 towns in Massachusetts and 126 got the consulting funding. So we're not alone, but we definitely, we jockeyed real hard to put this request in. The other thing real quick, Tom, like to launch it is like, there's just so many hidden little, not little, I don't mean to say little, but there's so many hidden small businesses like in the mills, for example, either One Cottage Street or, Eastworks, etc. If we can get those owners to help us kind of interact with their tenants, like this was a really good time for us to try to do this and just get as many people aware of this as possible.
Yeah, I guess at the end of sorry, Gwen. At the end of the day, it may actually take boots on the ground, knocking on doors saying, hey, did you hear this information and did you hear what the benefits are? Could you take a few minutes and go check out the survey? Because you're right, a lot of those small businesses will just skip right over it and not know the magnitude of, or the benefit, if you will, of completing the survey.
Yeah. Yep.
Got it. It's 17 questions, 17.
Nice.
So that's pretty good. That takes 10 minutes if you're looking out the window half the time.
Yep. Good.
Chris Korchik, what's up?
Thanks. Jeff, the money that you anticipate getting unlocked at the state level, is that going to be directed at this targeted area or in different ways throughout the city?
My understanding so far is that there's a lot of discussions at the state level about funding recovery programs for businesses. And I think there's probably going to be a certain set that are going to be like one of the questions, like the checklist kind of thing. Did you participate in the local rapid recovery plan? Does this project fit your plan? Yes. And then you're eligible to kind of be in that pool of funding. And I think there's going to be that other set that we just don't know still. That's going to pop up, and if any of this data that we can gather kind of in this, like with some help, it's going to be one of the things we're trying to talk about too is there will be the things that fit in this focus, and then there'll be the things that we're going to identify on the periphery that fall a little bit outside of this scope, and we want to catalog those and just start to package those up too. And so any data that we collect, we want to capture it and use it for, this is going to be going on for a while. Any idea of a recovery is going to go on for a while. We're talking with the chamber about a partnership with, there's funding that they might be eligible for and some funding that we might be eligible for, and like the vice versa. And, we want to create like the mechanism to share funding across the city and chamber line. And so, it's something we have not hammered out the exact details of how that would work. And I think this will set us up to help do that.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to share from the city planning office?
Yeah, sorry. One more thing, which is, we had some discussion about outdoor dining last time, and we met as the city. I requested a meeting of fire department, police department, health department, the mayor's office, who oversees the licensing board, and the mayor. So we have some challenges to do this, to kind of open up these opportunities, especially this idea of converting parking spaces to dining opportunities or retail opportunities. It was, I learned that on Union Street and Cottage Street in particular, we have a lot more truck traffic. It's very focused, and so that's a really important concern of public safety. And I laid out a proposal to reroute pedestrian traffic into the parking spaces so that the sidewalks would be free for tables or displays and stuff like that. And the thing that the fire department demonstrated to me was that any area that, especially on Cottage Street, because the striping is kind of new, anywhere that has yellow hashed mark striping are fire zones, and that they will not allow any kind of Jersey barriers or any kind of blocking of that. And so that's definitely going to put a hamper on ways we can do this on the street. That said, the mayor indicated that there seems to be some support and a lot of chatter coming out of the state about potential restaurant relief packages coming forward, and some of them might relate to relaxing some of the alcohol restrictions. And it kind of restarted this discussion about like a communal area, even if we could, because we had this discussion last time, even if we just set up a place with some picnic tables and just tried to say, here, you can bring your takeout here. The mayor was really interested in that as a fallback to if we can't get too far with street parking. And she was hoping that this group would help. So if you've ever encountered the mayor, she's fast. And so she's like, let's meet next week and start to hammer out some details. The other thing that's related came up was the Maple Street School and adding some parking access there. So she's got a kind of a renewed interest in that. I think we have some challenges up until June when the students are in session. But I think if we kind of set our sights on right after school's out to be in midsummer and have set up a program where we can have some signs directing people to the Maple Street lot, and it's the section off of Maple Street. There's 20 parking spaces, and if you looked at the easy button, you could hit the easy button and you could maybe access that. So there's a fair amount of work that we would want to embark on and continue discussions on it. And Gwen, I think it would beg a meeting in between the regular scheduled meeting of EDIC, if anyone who would want to help with that. And I know that Paul was really interested in that kind of stuff too, and he's not here. But so outside of this meeting, maybe there's a way we could pull together a group to keep talking about that. That concludes my update.
Questions from the crowd?
Sounds like a good time to set priorities for the year.
Does. Any other thoughts?
Just a couple of questions, Cassie, before we get to the priorities, just on what Jeff was talking about. I think the communal dining concept can work, setting up various places within each district. So, maybe Cottage Street is 50 Payson, maybe Union Street is the senior center, and maybe we approach the owner of the Union Plaza. Maybe we could set up picnic tables in the Union Plaza next to the bike path. Maybe the Rotary is a possibility. Town-owned. I know there's a lot of traffic around there, but I guess I'm a little confused. I'm not sure what the issue would be with parking, because if all these folks went to the various restaurants, they would find a place to park anyway. unless the thought is that communal dining might bring more people out, and where would they park? But if I was going to Casey's, if he was open, I'd be parking somewhere on Main Street. If I had to go to Casey's place and take it out and go sit at the Rotary, I'd still park somewhere on Main Street probably. So I guess I'm a little confused how the parking is impacted by communal dining.
Cottage Street is just a mess on the weekends. There's just not enough parking. If we're going to have, Fridays and Saturdays and occupy outdoor space and pick up some parking spaces, it's absolutely necessary that people park at 50 Payson Avenue and Maple Street. If we can sort of get a clear message across to people that it's available, then they're more likely to go, as opposed to not being able to find a space right away and give it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
Main Street's fine. We're good until we have critical mass. Just critical mass exists down Cottage Street, so that's where a little bit of focus on strategy needs to come into play. Outdoor dining is fine for me. I got tons of it. Vera Cuisin and they could use some, but it just may not be in the cards. Maybe behind the building they could figure out something, but I just think Union Street's tough. Cottage Street definitely needs to have a focus on convenient factors if limitations going to be put in place. They have those issues anyhow. The Brass Cat can have 40, 50 people out and back and be very happy, but where are those people going to park? And they want to be there for an hour plus. So, the more parking down there, the better.
Yeah. And I failed to mention one thing that the mayor wanted to do was, what she urged was that it came to me, create an application that can go out to businesses. That's the hardest part, is we don't want to do something that no one wants, but we want to put out an application that would allow a business to propose something to us. But I guess the emphasis is going to be on that public safety is going to be first, and that some proposals may not get approved because they conflict with public safety. But we want to offer it because if we can understand what people are thinking, we might come up with alternatives too. One of the alternatives that I would express outward and just keep talking about is anyone who has a business on private property, and the idea of behind the building. The city is not putting up any hurdles to someone going behind the property. I think Pizza House, the package store on Union Street, that property has parking behind, and we are putting up very little barriers to having on a private piece convert some parking. That's what's happening at the breweries and some other locations. So that's always going to be an option for these businesses to explore. It's when you get into the public realm. And then the last piece is just that these seating areas would just be there to allow people, if they wanted to go there. We're not talking about table service to these places, but just to create the place. And I think that's what we talked about last time too. So there's a little bit of momentum gathering. So if we had a small group that met maybe next week, or the week after to vet it a little further, that would be pretty great.
I could just see two simple things coming from this. One would be potentially a valet service, where they have Maple Street parking, and you have a valet service that you get to go right downtown, drop your car off, you go to one of those shops and have a valet service. That, something. Or the other thing is just more public safety as far as street crosswalkers and people directing traffic, something minimum wage type jobs that just help coordinate pedestrian traffic and parking traffic. Super cheap in the big picture, but really helpful and encouraging to people to realize what's good about the business area is that it becomes convenient, or it becomes sort of at least managed, that people will enjoy.
I've seen Jeff drive the senior bus before. That could be a valet option.
Exactly. You designate 50 parking spots and a shuttle bus. You got one driver and you got 3 stops, and whether or not it's chamber looks for donations to put together the funding for it, or whether or not a different business group puts together, or whether or not it's a tip service, or whether or not there's grant money for it. I got $75,000 from Massachusetts because I'm a restaurant and I applied for it. So that basically open the door for me to basically hire another employee whenever I feel like the time is, because I've got the funds. So, there's, like Jeff said, there's going to be money thrown at us. It's just a question of the right asks.
Yeah. And it's like, there's kind of two parallel paths. The things that we can do like really quick in like weeks, right? And then like the things that you mentioned, Casey, are good. And I think that falls into this local recovery plan to put that on a document and paper, so that and find some support for that. And then you chase the money to support it. So I think just always be thinking about, okay, the things that we could implement real quick, and then the things that go on this list that we would want to support with funding. I think that's going to be the separators. What are the things that we can do without funding and with funding? So this is good. I will cease talking so you guys can talk about your priority list.
Righty. Thank you for all of that. I like the detail that we get into. All right. So Cassie Akoff helped me think through an approach that we can use to prioritize some stuff so that we can get to next year at this time, March 2022, and look back and go, holy wow, look at what we did. We are really good at this. And I think that that's a great thing. So we have this existing list of, if you're looking at your agenda or if you're looking at an email that I sent you, we have a 9-item list about things that have come up, some of them for multiple years, some of them in more recent months, and things that we could really put energy behind. They are not all at the same scale, and that is okay. So what we are proposing is that people have an opportunity to share their strong feelings for or against any of these items, but that there are limited opportunities to do that. So there are 9 items. You get to have an opinion about 7 of them. And at most, I'm not asking you to have an opinion about, I'm not asking you to maximize your opinions. If you don't have a strong feeling, you don't have to have a strong feeling. Is that correct, Cassie? I'm not inviting strong feelings that don't exist. Okay. And we can, yeah, so that's how we're going to approach this. Cassie, what am I missing? What do I definitely need to pay attention to?
Let's go through the list. If you feel really strongly about something, speak about it. No more than 2 minutes. Is this a 5 o'clock ending meeting?
Yeah.
We got a boogie here if we're going to make a list. So that's it. You don't have to talk. It's okay not to.
Okay. And I would like to ask people's opinions about this. Paul is sick today, so he's not with us because he's having trouble just breathing through his face. And so we send you our best wishes, Paul. And also, he did send his opinions about a few items. Is it okay if I read them on his behalf at the point that we get to those items? Okay. So I propose we go in first name alphabetical order to get through these items. Is that fine with people? Meaning, here's item 1. If you have an opinion, I'll call on you and you can share it or not. Yeah? It's okay? All right. So, whoops, I didn't put all in. All right. What's the first one? Vacant buildings or storefronts. Casey, do you have a strong opinion for or against focusing on vacant buildings / storefronts this year?
I certainly do. I am applying for an ECA grant to put images in storefronts.
Okay.
So I think that's a realistic thing without the grant. I'm seeking permission to do that. I think it's a viable place to create art, and I think that the public will support it, and I think the property owners will support it. It doesn't have to be all of them, just a few of them. So yes, we're doing it.
Okay. Anybody else have a strong feeling for or against vacant storefronts? Josh.
I have it's only if it's strong that it does not get dropped by the wayside. I think we need to be more as proactive as we possibly can. But question, Casey, what type of images were you talking about?
If you ask him that, he's using up one of his 7 turns to talk.
Okay, never mind. I'll find out later. Okay, that's just strong supporter of working on the vacant buildings.
Okay. Hey, Chris, you have a strong opinion?
Yes, I think that we should, and I think that the work that Cassie did a few months ago we should revisit and push for this year.
Cassie? Sorry, I've gone completely out of alphabetical order. I'm now just going by your faces. Sorry. Cassie, do you have a strong opinion about vacant buildings?
No.
Okay. Tom Brown?
Yes, I think that should be a high priority. I think it's something that is, I don't mean to minimize it, but it's fairly easy for us to accomplish as opposed to some of the other more difficult things. I think it's critical because of some of these storefronts have been vacant so long. Another business is in the process of leaving Main Street. That's going to create a huge number of vacancies. I think in that particular building, it will only leave Silver Spoon and Antonio's. And that the owner of that building is the same person who owns the building next to Casey. So I'm concerned about what happens to Main Street. If you flip the page real quick, there were vacancies on Cottage Street that the owner of the building renovated, and it seemed like in the blink of an eye filled up the entire three or four storefronts. So I don't know what's going on Cottage Street versus Main Street. They're leaving Main Street and they're flocking to Cottage Street. I'm guessing it has something to do with ownership of the properties.
I also am strongly in favor of paying pretty close attention, advocating in whatever way we can, thinking creatively, supporting local business owners, supporting people who are thinking about business. I think we need to address vacant buildings and storefronts for the sake of aesthetics as well as our economy. I think we got to revitalize and make more animated a lot of those spaces, because it's the more you see in one spot, it makes you feel kind of worried. So that's just it's a human feeling. Okay, we've heard from everybody about vacant buildings. Who's going to say something about vacant buildings? Future school building use. I'm going to lead with a comment from Paul. He feels that keeping Pepin School in city hands is extremely important. We just can't lose that property. We can use it for the Head Start program, which will need a new home, and as an intergenerational health and wellness center. I know you're all familiar with what I want to see with this, and there was incredible community support for this idea at the summer workshop we went to. Whether or not it fits into the mission of EDIC, he's not entirely sure, but if we can have a part to play, that would reinforce the importance of this facility to the city, then it would be a good thing to do. Anyone else who wants to say anything about school building use? Tom.
I'm just a little concerned about this one. I do think EDIC should come up with sort of a consensus that we could present to the committee. There's going to be a committee established, I believe, that's part of this overall downtown strategic plan. So our only role in this is going to be offering some opinions or input, which there'll probably be 16,000 of them, knowing that that's how many residents there are in Easthampton. And I think of the 8 or 9 of us on EDIC, there could be 8 or 9 different opinions as to what should happen to the building. So I'm not sure how we come up with a consensus, and I know our input will have value to the committee, but we're not the decision makers in this one. We only sort of offer a suggestion or opinion. So I put this one a little bit further down on the priority list, just because there's going to be so much focus on this from entities that have more authority than we do in this process.
I think that we should have a strong understanding of what's going on the Future School Building Use Committee, and we should have I want bears. Okay. And I want there to be a liaison of some kind who can make sure that they're attending those meetings, et cetera, or watching those recordings, so that people who can't are up to date. So that's my thought on that. Chris Korchak.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to suggest a liaison. I think that's a good role from EDIC. It's not really our purview, but input is good from us if we can get somebody there, at least to act as a public speaker, if not an official member.
Okay. Anybody else about school building? Casey.
I think that we could play a nice balance between the public and the private sector as far as expanding, as far as educating the dreams like Paul has, which, if they're achievable, they're great, but also reality as far as what things cost. So I think that we should be able to have a little bit of a influence or a voice in either the scoring process or the RFP to be able to get a clearer idea of what goes in there. That it's just, I think we have a lot of brains among all of us to have some form of input in some small way.
Anybody else have a strong opinion you want to share about school building? Okay. Zoning changes up next. I'm going to share Paul's thought on that. We probably need to redo our zoning from the ground up. The consultant we worked with last year on the housing study pointed out that our zoning was much longer and more complicated than what is typical, and that it included conflicting regulations. We also know there are issues with the parking lot zoning rules and minimums. I think instead of having minimum requirements for parking spaces, we should have maximum limits for parking spaces and try to avoid the unnecessary paving over of green space. Anyone else want to speak in favor of or against focusing on zoning changes? Tom.
Sorry. I think I agree with what Paul was saying. I think the zoning, any changes to zoning have to start from the ground up. It's almost like you throw it out and start all over. And I think it takes something to the magnitude of what Judy Barrett did with the housing study. And I think the biggest issue we would face / Jeff would be finding the money to do that.
And I would add, it would be nice for us to have incidences to voice an opinion, but for us to get on the ground level seems just more than what we'd be capable of doing.
Other thoughts about zoning?
Can I say something? I know I'm not on the committee because I've been biting my tongue, but I've heard the same things that other people have heard about the zoning and overhauling it, and I just think in my position here, I think it's a midterm, like it's a midway goal. Like, so we've worked for 2 years on the housing production plan. So I just want to put a plug in for, like, now we have that housing plan, which was really important for us to establish. And I think I wouldn't want us to then jump right into a complete zoning overhaul without first tackling a couple of the really key housing related zoning things that we need. We need to tackle those. Like, there are things that we should do with housing in response to having the housing production plan. And then I think as we can accomplish some of those, then maybe we start talking about the overhaul. I just wouldn't want the overhaul concept to, like, get front loaded and then we put aside the housing amendments that we know we can start to put forward. And there's a lot of movement already on some of the housing ones. So maybe it's not a really long wait, but that would just be my plug.
Thank you. All right. Any other thoughts about zoning? Okay, the update is, Casey, you have 4 more opportunities to talk. Cassie, you haven't said a thing. You have 7.
I'm saving up.
Chris has 5. Gwen has 5. Josh has 6. Tom has 4. Paul has 5. Okay. So, weight your opinions accordingly. Accessory dwelling units / affordable housing opportunities. Who would like to speak in favor or against focusing on these?
Wow.
I have something from Paul, but Tom, feel free.
I think I'm sort of piggybacking on what Jeff just said here, but I think these were points that came out of the housing study that Jeff, I don't want to overstate this, but it might be a little bit of low-hanging fruit here on these 2 issues that came out of the housing study that, in fact, I think the city council just approved a couple of pieces of that, or they're in the process of, so I think some of this is incorporated in the housing study that could be implemented. And just on zoning, Jeff, if we started that zoning today, there's no way we would even get it going probably before we were done what we were going to do with the housing study. My guess is that's years, not months.
Happy to see the council taking steps here, and I also think there's more work to be done. It's great to encourage more affordable housing developments, but we also need to look at the gridlock in the market caused by low housing mobility and the number of family-sized homes inhabited by only 1 or 2, often older people. Many of the homes which would be affordable to young families we want to attract are not going to be new developments. The cost to build is sky high, is going to be older homes that are currently inhabited. Until we have a comprehensive approach that addresses the housing issues on these other levels, such as senior housing and affordable housing developments, and possibly creating more infill opportunities in current neighborhood areas, we're still going to struggle to attract the young working families we need. I also think the ADU limitations we have are too restrictive and should look for ways to loosen those over time and give people as much flexibility as we can reasonably allow.
Is that Paul?
That's Paul. Okay. Next up, social media engagement with the community. Does anyone want to speak in favor of or against focusing on social media engagement with the community? Josh Rosenblatt.
Mute. Yeah, I think this is really something that would benefit us quite a bit and benefit the city. And on a side note, about 3 months ago, the mayor sent us all a link to the Falmouth, Massachusetts EDIC. Do any of you remember that? It was really, really cool. Now, this is not huge a priority as other things that we have on our docket, but I still think it's worth paying attention to. Granted, it would probably take some money, or if any of us have the expertise, I know I don't, but if any of you haven't looked at the thing that the mayor sent about the Falmouth EDIC, I suggest that you go look at it. Okay, that's it for me.
Sure. I would also like to speak in favor of the general idea of coming up with a plan for social media engagement. I think the EDIC has a role to play. I don't think that role is any particular thing, but we've had lots of different kinds of conversations about how we might amplify other presences in social media environments. And I think it's worth digging into that in a more intentional way. I think that is a way that we get better access to our community, and they get better access to us and to information. And I think that free flow of information is good. Anybody else want to say anything about social media?
I would totally agree with you. I'm lucky enough to have a bookkeeper who watches all the Easthampton media about the stuff that's going on, and it's long and arduous, but there's so much content that she knows about that just is not accessible anywhere else unless you go through that information. Josh mentioned a very good article in the Gazette about I even read it about the working with the chamber, and it's that kind of thing where you just see on social media people ripping apart the potholes on Union Street, and then people work hard to tell them what the deal is. That it would be nice if there was some form, and I don't know if it's us or whether or not we can just be someone who gives content to some way to educate people. I know that Jeff, your social media with the Ferry Street project was very successful. So it's just sort of like, yeah, I see a value in it.
Okay, thank you. Next up, creating a decision-making approach for when we take a stance / write a letter or in some other way advocate regarding new business or planning board applications. Anyone want to speak in favor or against this? I think that in the grand scheme of things, this is on a smaller scale than some of the other items in this list. Chris.
I think that even though it's smaller scale, it's not worth our time, to be honest. I don't think we've ever had a problem before, have we, that I know of? That's all.
I'm not sure, Chris, what you mean by have a problem. I mean, I think if we send a letter of support to the planning board or zoning on something that affects a business that wants to come to Easthampton, I think that carries some weight with the particular approving authority.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I fully support sending letters. My understanding of the bullet point was coming up with a process for whether or not we're going to send a letter. I think that we should send letters all the time. I just don't think we should spend time deciding about a process for approving letters.
Oh, thank you. I agree. We should send letters all the time.
Oh, all right. So there's a proposal that we can vote on in April. All right. So Anyone else want to speak in favor or against decision-making approach for advocacy or letters? Jeff Bagg.
Just the process to make sure that EDIC is getting like when a project comes up for public hearing, like I think the line of communication we want to figure out a little better, like make it stronger. That would be because I think that goes to like, when do you know that a project's coming up, and sometimes it's too late, and that's something that we can work on and fix, I think.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we're a little bit reactionary to what we hear as opposed to proactive about knowing what's on the agenda and having a conversation before it's already discussed to be able to voice in an opinion, as opposed to all the people that are the neighbors that don't want something. It's like we should be the voice of support for some things.
Yeah, because a couple of those housing amendments are going to come up, and that would be a really good practice run at like seeing which public hearing, because there's usually a couple. So like which public hearing do you go to, and then which one is the most important to kind of make like a strong statement in support when people are opposing. So like that, yeah, that's manageable.
So I am also in favor of having a more specific structure around that, knowing for sure like we would expect to get this kind of communication from this person, and then this is what we do next. Because right now it is admittedly a little haphazard. So that's one for Gwen. Okay, update. Casey and Tom, you both have 2 more chances to speak. Chris, you have 3. Paul has 4. Josh has 5. Gwen has 4. Cassie, you still haven't spoken. You have 7 other opportunities to talk. You're saving them. Okay. All right. Next up, COVID-specific outdoor dining ideas, some of which we may, in fact, offer up as ideas to LRRP, some of which we may decide to champion ourselves. That part, I suppose you could incorporate in your 2 minutes of speaking. Cassie, you would like to say something?
I would like to say something. I am all about the lot. And, hey, Josh, why don't you and Katie meet me down at the lot tonight, and we'll just bring a picnic dinner. I've heard people say, oh, people will bring their own picnics. I told my daughter who does social planning in Chicago, her response was, no, they're going to see the delicious thing your neighbor's eating and go get that next week. I thought that was a great take on picnics. I think it's feasible. I think it matches our mission. I think there's momentum. I think the mayor's on our side. I think we could make it fun and keep it at a manageable scope. That will be key. Simple, manageable scope. I'm done.
Who else would like to speak in favor of or against COVID-specific outdoor dining ideas as a focus? Josh Rosenblatt.
Just demuting myself again, just to reiterate I think it's going to be really key to the bounce back of our restaurants is for us to have something like this where people can get together and utilize all the food that we have to offer. So any way we can make it work, whether we use multiple parking lots or I think we ought to push for it as much as we can. And I think I'd give this a pretty high priority in the top 2 or 3.
I'd also, since I have more points here, I'd also like to suggest that if we do vote this as a priority, that we form a subgroup today to start working on it. So we're right there when the sun starts shining.
Gwen, I can't hear you.
No? Can anyone hear me?
Hear you now.
I think your mic needs a louder voice to trigger, I think is what's happening.
Okay, Tom, your turn.
I would just pick up on what Josh said about and what Cassie said about the lot. I would just pluralize that. I think you might need more than one based on the distance from the Rotary to Nini's. It's quite a wide span, and you might just need more than one location.
Very good. All right. Anybody else who wants to speak in favor or against COVID outdoor dining? No? Okay. Second to last, commitment to EDIC representatives showing up to zoning meetings. Would anyone like to speak in favor of or against this?
I'm in favor. I don't know if we could rotate the designation of who's responsible. I know I cannot commit another night, but I could do one a month.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody else? All right. Creative ideas for transporting people around the city to planned music, art, and food events.
I think that would be very successful. I think Arts in the Orchard proved to be wildly successful for me to be the lead sponsor. People went there. People came to my place. It's a winning formula. I think if we can create accessibility, the city has a lot to offer. We don't want to get them bogged down in any one location. We want to see the 3 different zones that we have in the city. I think that it's an easy one to emulate what other communities do.
Very good. Casey, you're out of talking turns. Tom, you have one more if you want to say anything about this. And everybody else, you have a little wiggle room. For or against creative ideas. Chris Korchik.
I would love to see it. I think it's important to the city, and even if we had a permanent shuttle going around our zone for year round, I would love to see that too. I think that would solve a lot of problems and bring a lot of revenue.
Anyone else? For or against? Okay. So, Cassie, my understanding is now we move to voting, and we're in a situation where we have 9 items. And so if did you say we divide by 3 or 2 to give people chits? Can't hear you.
We're going to vote for our top 3 favorite items.
Okay, very good. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to go around and ask each person their top 3, and we'll write those. We're not rank ordering these. It's just you got 3 stickers. You're going to put them on 3. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go according to my screen. So Chris, what are your top 3 items?
Vacant storefronts, future school building use, and transporting folks. So 1, 2, and 9.
Okay. Josh Rosenblatt, what are your top 3?
Vacant storefronts first, COVID outdoor dining second, and social media engagement. So that's 1, 4, and the third to the last one. COVID is.
Good. All right. No worries about that. Casey Douglas, what are your top 3?
I would say 9 would be a priority. I guess 1, because I'm going to do it anyhow, and then the social media 5.
Okay. Cassie.
I am going to vote for vacant buildings, outdoor dining, and transportation.
Great. Tom Brown.
147.
147. Tom. Which one's 4? Accessory dwelling units?
Yes. So vacant building storefronts, accessory dwelling units, and outdoor dining. Not in any order of priority. That's just my 3.
Very good. I'm going to get on board with vacant buildings, social media, and yeah, oh boy, my 3rd, I don't know. Oh cripes, I'm a tiebreaker, I hate that. I guess COVID dining. All right, so here's the breakdown, y'all. Vacant buildings, storefronts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 votes. Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. And we got COVID-specific outdoor dining with 4 votes. And we got transportation, 3 votes.
And
All right, so we have a tie then between social media engagement and transit, as well as COVID and vacant buildings. So we've got 4 as focal areas. Cassie, what are your thoughts?
Do you guys want to vote between the social media and transportation to narrow it down?
Oh, sure. Does that seem reasonable, y'all? Are we willing to make that bifurcation? Okay. So you can choose one. Well, there's 6 of us, so. You can choose either social media engagement or you can choose transit. Which do you choose? Chris Korchak.
Sexy transportation.
Okay. Josh.
Transportation as well.
Casey. Sorry, what did you say?
Who, me?
That's the problem with me looking away. Cassie.
Transportation.
All right, well, we've got 4. Do I need to know what the rest of us think? Tom, do you want to weigh in?
Social media.
Ooh.
Rebel.
Honestly, I'm social media too, so there you go. But Tom and I together gracefully lose out to transportation. So that means that our focal areas are vacant buildings and storefronts, creative ideas for transporting folks around the city to plan music, art, and food events, and COVID-specific outdoor dining ideas. So we are going to have these as our big 3 that we can focus on in useful and creative ways all the way through March 2022. Cassie, you want to create a little mini subcommittee for the thing you predicted, which was that people would be on board with COVID-specific outdoor dining.
You want me to create it right now?
No, I just want to get affirmation that that is what you are hoping to achieve today.
I would love to achieve that today.
Are there any other thoughts about what we should do next about these 3 things that I can document that we can pick up in April?
Could I just ask one point of clarification on the vacant buildings? I understand what Casey's talking about doing, but I believe that the background for this is Cassie's plan, which was to come up with a system of penalizing penalties, if you will, for long-term vacancies. The plan that Cassie, that's what we're talking about trying to get implemented. Great, thank you.
Or something along those lines, right? Something that addresses the fact that we have vacant storefronts and we would prefer for there to be active businesses or similar in those spaces.
Thank you.
Okay, so any thoughts on what you would want to see happen next or things related to these that we should definitely pick up at our next meeting, other than we're going to talk about them at our next meeting? Casey.
I would like to identify or come up with a list, identify particular pieces of property, right? So we can identify them. Work on perhaps a form letter or some sort of greetings to say what our mission statement, our objective is, and how it is that they can participate, and work on having something cleaned up by next meeting or at next meeting.
Okay, great.
Casey, could you repeat that?
So first of all, I'd like to identify property owners and particular buildings, right? So we don't just have a general concept. We can say that there are 12 specific properties. Then the second part would be some form of communication with these property owners, introduction letter, something that says that it's a focus of ours to try to heighten the summer experience, fall experience here in Easthampton. And part of that is to work in partnership with them to try to, make their building more attractive to future renters, buyers, or at least eye candy for pedestrians and people going through the community.
And I guess I would add to that, if we could dust off Cassie's proposal, I think she had an outline a year ago or so. If we could dust that off and review that at the next meeting.
Yep. Great.
And then, Jeff, I'm not sure what our process is if we wanted to start the ball rolling on some sort of implementation of possible penalties, and how we'd go about getting that through the legal process, if you will.
Yeah, my only guess at the moment is that it'd probably be some kind of ordinance, you know, and there might be a quick discussion about zoning versus like the general ordinance, and sometimes something like this is going to be better in the general ordinance. That might be kind of like something to kind of follow, like figure out that process, what that would look like.
Okay, good.
I think that's what Arlington did.
All right, any other thoughts about things that we definitely need to have on our list or our agenda for April? Okay, Cassie.
Jeff, excuse me, Jeff, if you're starting to have meetings around the dining stuff, I'm totally available to help and do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think if we thought about sometime maybe middle or end of next week, I think that'd be great to touch base and figure out what's next. I don't think it's unlike what Casey said in terms of a list of properties. And I think we should talk about public property, but also private property that we can come up with in a study area that might be suitable. And then, you know, reaching out to the owners for Easthampton's easy, but then those private property owners. So yeah, maybe a meeting next week would be a great way to start.
Well,
that.
also for the dining, I was thinking more specifically.
Yeah, I think that's what I was referring to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Does anybody else want to do dining? Josh?
I'm sure that I will, just not in the month of March.
And I'm sure Paul will when he gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Gwen, as far as adding stuff to agenda for next month on transportation, it would be good to figure out the scope of what we want to accomplish by having the agenda, and maybe what areas it would serve.
All right. Okay, I think we've reached the end of our agenda. I don't have any new items. Does anyone else have any new items? Okay. It looks like I failed to put the actual date of the month for when our next scheduled meeting is. It is April 20th from 4 to 5:15. So we will have a little extra time formally to have this conversation about our new exciting big three. Okay. Do we have a motion to close out this meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, holler aye.
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 Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Omar.